Alright, welcome to the first session of Southern Door Solutions. This is a talk show dedicated to letting people speak openly about how they feel. So today we're going to talk about aliens. Do they exist or not? So today we brought in Emily Colpine and Heath Kennedy. So they're going to talk a little bit about how they feel about aliens, and we'll go from there. So Emily, do you believe aliens exist?
Do I believe aliens exist? Absolutely, Alexander. Absolutely. There is compelling, conclusive evidence on the daily that points to the existence of aliens.
What kinds of evidence?
Well, there's many species. We know somewhat where they're located, somewhat what they look like, somewhat what they can do. It's kind of like science where we can explain some of it, but not all of it, kind of like gravity. But people are in contact with them daily, people have seen them, there's recordings, and there's just a lot of evidence that points to the existence of aliens. And I would even argue there's more evidence that points to the existence of aliens than there does to the existence of a Christian God. I think there's more to it.
Okay, that's a valid point. Heath, how do you feel?
Well, about the existence of aliens, I like to theorize about them and kind of, I think aliens are mostly just a make-believe gimmick that tries to, captivate people's attention, just something to think about. Because it is interesting to think that somewhere on another planet or around another star that there's a colony of intelligent beings like us. However, I've never seen any actual proof that they exist or any evidence that suggests they might, except for the fact that we're here, so why can't there be anything elsewhere? However, because there's no evidence, I'd have to say that it's not a valid conclusion.
That's another good point to bring up. So, I mean, like we've talked about, like current times, do they exist right now? Do you believe that? How do you feel about the beginnings of Earth, like earthly beings, like us?
Personally, I do believe in God, and I believe in that He created us and He created the Earth. But I guess I can't speak for Emily because, well, she kind of voiced her opinion. But yeah, personally, I don't think that God created aliens because He meant humans to be special. He meant Earth to be a special place where He had created life, and He didn't want to kind of taint that by creating other colonies, kind of making us less special than we're supposed to be.
Yeah. How do you feel?
I would say not only is there evidence, there's lots of information out there. People are in contact with them on the daily. It's not about us being special. In fact, these aliens, some of them do try to harm us. They try to feed off of our energy. Some of them do try and help us. They protect us. There's, for example, the Andromedans. So they're located in the next galaxy. We're in the Milky Way. They're in their Andromedan galaxy. And there's about 8 planets, and they have had this intergalactic council where they have some of their highest, most supreme beings interacting. And they work to help protect Earth. They help to bring Earth to the next level. And in many cases, they act as God. They have many godlike abilities. And as the soul, as the conscious, ascends from the 3-dimensional plane to the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, it keeps going. As you get further up in those dimensional planes, you're less reliant on your physical body. And so therefore, when you have these aliens that are at a higher intellectual level than we are, they're able to help us or they're able to hurt us. It's not necessarily about there being the one creator. In fact, there's a lot of that. In fact, there's, like I've said, people that have seen in contact that show that they are here to help us. And it's not about being special. It's about being a part of something bigger than us. It's a very 3-dimensional idea for us to be special.
So, I'm sure that you're familiar with some of our earthly attempts to try to hear kind of communications between and maybe different radiational sources. So we have big fields of satellites that, big radio discs and those big bowls, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. We have big fields of those, and there has been a lot of research and money that has been put towards that. So, I mean, as far as results so far, there hasn't really been anything, but that's not to say that they don't use another source of communication like Emily's talking about. So, I mean, do you think that we might have a better approach of...
I think people are going about it the wrong way. Oftentimes with this ascension from the 3D world to the 4D5 world, a lot of those upper terrestrial beings, they tend to communicate telepathically. They often refer to vibrations and how everything is vibrations. And once you realize that everything is energy and everything is vibrations, they're able to pick and choose how they communicate, who they reveal themselves to, how they move within the universe. So if you're looking strictly for sound waves, you're not going to necessarily find those. You need to have people that are above this 3D realm in order to communicate on the same level as those extraterrestrial beings that are already on that higher level.
Okay. All right. How do you feel about our earthly attempts trying to find another being out there?
Okay, so these satellite dishes, whatever, that is picking up the waves, the signals, that's all it is cosmic radiation, which comes from the radioactive decay of the universe, and that is not evidence of aliens at all. That's just that's happening here on Earth. That's happening inside our bodies, that decay, radioactive decay, and it happens every second of the day in every part of the universe, and that has nothing to do with aliens. So when Emily talks about, I don't know, aliens, and this is proof of people speaking to aliens and such things as that, I'd be interested to know where that proof comes from and how.
Alright, I know, if you've ever heard of the psychic twins, Terry and Linda, they've actually had personal contact with gray aliens, which are the negative ones that feed off of energy. And what these gray aliens did is they were feeding off the energy, and they became very robotic. They became husks of themselves. They were incredibly drained. They were no longer who they used to be. And these were aliens that they saw, that they came in contact with, that they were abducted by multiple times, and they speak openly about their experience with these great aliens. And they're a big public figure. As psychics, they've also predicted a lot of worldly events. They've predicted like 9/11, they predicted Grammy wins, they've predicted just many things in the world. You can look them up, they're on YouTube, they've been on talk shows, they've been on TV shows. They're very big public figures and they've had contacts. So that's one example. Otherwise, there's plenty of, you just look up like Arcturian Council, there's many logs that come up like on a weekly basis where people have channeled these beings.
Okay, but if the aliens were so high and mighty and they didn't really want to be found, which is how it seems because the majority of Earth majority of people in society don't have any proof of them. So it would seem like the aliens don't want themselves to be known. So if they were that powerful, why wouldn't they have stopped people from sharing that information and telling people that, hey, we know about aliens?
I think more so it refers to these aliens. They need to protect themselves too. If there was an alien that said, I am here in the now, you can bet the first thing that's going to happen is someone's going to take them, they're going to kill those aliens. And they know this, they're a lot smarter than we are. And so the people that do know about aliens, and they do share their experience, people often just write them off because they don't believe it, because it's not right in front of them. And so many people on this 3D realm, they need to have the tangible proof of the aliens. But once you start to ascend, you start to be able to see and feel and recognize the other beings, other energies, other vibrations, other powers of the universe. And you start to see the interconnectedness of it all. And then you stop being quite still, like angry and violent, which is another sign of 3D, 2D, 1D reality. So if you are looking for people that say that like aliens exist, like I know, I talk to them, people often just write them off. And so they're also very busy as a species with their own beings, with protecting, the Arcturians once again. They have like a spaceship that's located between like Saturn and Jupiter, I believe, and they spend a lot of time like defending us from Greys, for example, reptilians, other negative alien sources. Oh no.
Hey.
Yep. Alright. Malfunction. Hold on.
Oh, there we go.
Alright, there we go. Okay.
Alright, well,
I guess that was like a good break. So with what Emily was saying, so what if somebody wanted to try to
Contact?
be more in contact with them? What if somebody wanted to try it out, take those first beginning steps? What would somebody do?
They're actually very responsive with that. If you put your intentions out into the universe, like I want to contact aliens, I want to see them, I want to see them in my dreams, I want to feel them, they will come in contact with you.
Okay.
A lot of people do that. People in our school, fellow classmates, have had contact with aliens. They range in size, they range in height, they range in appearance. You want to make sure that you're finding good aliens and not the greys, not the reptilians. But if you put those intentions into the universe, they will often reward you.
Okay.
Similarly to how like an angel will respond to your call. If you say, I want to see evidence of angels, they will respond to you.
Well, see, to me, that sounds more like demonism than proof of
Demonism.
aliens. Because, well, if we talk about demons, which are basically God's creation, they used to be angels, but they're called the fallen angels because they disobeyed God, and so got kicked out of heaven. But so demons will try to persuade humans, and because basically all they're in for is evil, and they want to see people suffer and see people harmed. But you could think of demons and angels as extraterrestrial beings, aliens, because they don't live on Earth, and they're spirit creatures, which are in heaven, but heaven's not really an actual place, it's just a place that we assign them.
So, I mean, do you think that there might be maybe a connection between the fallen angels and the Greys that Emily was talking about? Do you think that they might be one and the same somehow?
I certainly think that the demons can portray themselves as whatever they want to be, and like us, they can make up stories and fictitious facades to play with and try to influence humans. So I think that they could be portraying themselves as these aliens, just trying to mislead people.
Okay.
And also, so there's satellites in our solar system and in our galaxy that are constantly looking for alien evidence and spaceships and other craft out there. And so if there is a spaceship between Saturn and Jupiter, if that, right? That's what he said.
Mhm.
I believe that those satellites would have documented it and taken pictures.
I think once
But-
again you're getting stuck in your three-dimensional thinking. These people are not on the same astral plane as us. They've ascended beyond. While they do have physical bodies, they are no longer. They can make themselves invisible. They can bend light. They can portray themselves as not of beings of color. It doesn't. You don't have. Once again, it's that you don't have to see something to feel it. Just like you don't have to see heat to feel it.
So, do you think that maybe some of our bigger government organizations might have evidence of some of these beings, but maybe are hiding it from us? Do you at all think that's a possibility?
Oh, I think it's definitely a possibility. Anything's a possibility, but we always have to go back to Roswell in Area 51, where there allegedly was extraterrestrial. I mean, how much evidence is there in the government in regards to other things that aren't extraterrestrial that they keep in, much less something a lot bigger than humans, such as extraterrestrial beings?
Okay. Yeah, and it's cool that you brought up Roswell because all of the papers that the CIA have, I mean, we can have access to those if President Trump were to release them to the public. But he hasn't done so, and he hasn't made any comments of doing it. Yeah, there is that time period, that wait period that you have to wait. And that, I mean, it is what it is. That was established a long time ago. That happens with everything else. But that's something that President Trump hasn't made any comments on. So, what do you think resides in those papers?
I mean, it could be physical documentation. It could be scientific evidence. And they make research on the physical bodies because they can manifest themselves. They could ascend themselves. It really just depends on which type of aliens they happen to have documentations on. Like, for example, if we were to look at like the Arcturians, a lot of the times if they were to reside on Earth, and there is like rumors that they might be in more mountainous areas, more desolate areas. Or if we were to look at the Andromedons, they tend to be very human-like in their appearance, so it might be very deceiving when you do see an Andromedon. They tend to be very Nordic-looking, pale skin, yellow like hair, blue eyes, things like that. So it's not always the like neon green alien that you're thinking of. It could be quite a variety of appearances and abilities. And so, and those papers could be quite literally anything because they do come from a different galaxy that has different conditions for life. We happen to exist the way we do based on how the universe was created in the instance that it was. If things happened even slightly differently, thousands of years ago, we would be different as a result of that.
Yeah. How do you feel about some of those papers that have not been released yet? Do you think that there's any evidence within them that might trigger a public outcry of misconceptions?
Well, quite frankly, I don't really know anything about those papers or the guy who wrote them, so
Yeah.
I don't really have much to say.
And that's fair. That's fair. How do you feel? So we've been talking about intelligent life for most of this. How do you feel about maybe a different life form, like some
Animals.
bacteria, or like microscopic beings that exist here on Earth, and which, as far as we know, well, as science concludes that we have that is our common ancestor. That's where we are. That's where we evolutionized. That's where we come from. That's where we are. That's that. How do you feel about that?
Right, so science would tell you that life evolved and that you need specific gases to create amino acids, and that all has to compile into certain proteins that will build life. But scientists have never been able to actually synthesize life based on the gases that they believe would create such life. So again, to me, that proves the existence of God in creation, because there's no proof anywhere that you can actually build life with just the elements that we know to exist. And so, I mean, could there be bacteria or something on a different planet? That would have to that'd be based upon the fact that these gases and different elements have created this life. But we don't know that to be true in any instance.
So maybe
I'd like to argue against that slightly. If you were to look at earlier civilizations, such as like the Greeks and the Romans, and they have their Greek fire, they've had their concrete roads. We in our 2018 circa era, we don't know how to replicate the Greek fire that the Greeks used to have, hundreds of thousands of years ago. We don't know how to replicate the concrete that they used to create. It doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't do it. It's very obvious that they created the roads and the structures that they did. Just because we can't refigure it out doesn't mean it didn't necessarily happen. And so I would argue similar logic can be applied to the early conditions of the universe. Our world is no longer ruled by very large beetles and bugs and whatnot because it just simply cannot sustain that. So it doesn't mean that necessarily they can't be replicated. We just don't have the current information and the technology to replicate it.
Okay. Yeah. So, and this could go to either one of you. How would you feel if we had more knowledge and different studies were to come out saying that, hey, this is actually possible? And studies such as could actually come out within our lifetimes. So, science and technology has really taken off within the last 100 years, and to see in that same amount of time, we're going to be around in the next hundreds of years, hopefully, to be able to see that. So maybe if some studies were to come out saying, yes, we can synthesize life from given elements, given molecules, would your opinions at all change?
I mean, if they could actually do it, I think my opinion would have to change because that's kind of proven fact. But so far, science has been able to do everything, almost except make synthetic life. But that comes from the adage that life comes from life. You can't get life from nothing. Like, I can't make that chair turn into a living thing because it's not living right now. So to me, I think you need supernatural power that comes from God to put life into an object.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that's all throughout the show. We've had very valid points, and even if they were conflicting, each one of them can recognize each other's views and opinions on things. So, and ultimately, I think that's what we need to be able to do. Even not just, we're thinking like big picture here. So it's not just specifically to aliens. It's not specifically to anything. It's the general approach. We all need to be able to communicate with one another and effectively talk and have that validation that each other are different. And that's okay. It's totally natural that can happen. So with that, I am going to conclude the show for today. It was a very nice pilot show, and I applaud both of you for coming in and doing that. Our next show will be on arts and society, so stay tuned for it. Should be a good one. Thanks.